We are tech-savvy people, and yet we cannot figure out how to get mics and Hangouts and audio recording stuff to work. This is rather embarrassing.
I mean, we got it to work in the end. We just had to reboot like 7 times.
So we've got some follow-up, sorta.
Well, and we'll have to be careful not to let the follow-up take over the whole podcast, which could very well happen.
Well, that's true, because last time we did spend a ridiculous amount of time talking about YouTube Red. I seem to, in my memory, recall us spending like the last 20 minutes just talking about that. And no, it ended up being like 70-80% of the podcast. Like, okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it has gone live today, and there are updates, but the thing is that all of the updates are conflicting.
Yes.
So, we had talked about that there were issues of not knowing exactly how it works. That's still true. People have come forward and explained how it works, but people have explained how it works in different ways. So we have no idea what's going to happen.
And the information that YouTube seems to be putting out seems to be basically to put it kindly, self-confusing on purpose. I almost kind of feel a little bit of cynic in me says was very much not straightforward on purpose.
Well, they released an update today in which, and they said this like 4 times in their little, like, not even really a press release, just a, hey, we launched it, here's what it is, and here we're going to clear up all the details for you. And they said like 4 or 5 times that creators will be making more than they would have otherwise.
Yes.
Which is a very, very suspect way to phrase things, because if you didn't agree to YouTube Red, then you would be making no money, because they forced that on you and they were going to private your videos. So yes, it is very much true that YouTube creators will be making more than if they didn't agree to YouTube Red, in that they will potentially make more than nothing. As to whether it means that their revenue will increase from what it could have been at the end of the year when advertising is the bestest for creators, who knows?
In fact, we'll never know unless we invent the ability to talk to other universes. And then we can talk to the universe where YouTube Red didn't happen, and we can compare, assuming all of our variables are equal.
Exactly. Well, you have that ant experiment. I suppose we could just,
yes,
just question those.
Yes. We will attach tiny video recorders to the backs of the ants we send through the black holes, and we'll utilize them to find out if YouTube Red was actually a success or not.
Right.
Of course, the big controversy at the moment doesn't really have anything to do with the ad revenue versus advertising or not. It's actually whether or not anyone gets any money at all for the first month.
Yes, well, so they did announce that, so there was people were up in arms about that, because there were confirmations that, nope, no one would make any money during this month because it's a free trial for the first month. Full Screen announced that, their YouTube network, Social Blade, which is an analytics platform, announced that, and then the BBC came out and said, hey, nope, that's not what's happening, they're gonna fix it, and we expect them to announce it soon, and then everybody got really excited. And then Google did announce that. What they did announce is that, Google has had Google Music, and you can get an all-access Google Music Pass like you have with Spotify or Apple Music or Pandora or whatever. What they have said is that a portion of that revenue will go to creators during this 3-month trial thing. Now, of course, that means the people who were already paying for Google Music before this thing launched. What that means is not defined. It could mean that, 55% of all Google Music money is now going to go to YouTubers, despite the fact that nobody who had signed up for it at the time did it for YouTubers.
Right.
Or it could mean that, okay, we feel a little guilty and we're trying to mollify, so we'll just take like a small percentage of the profit we're already making and try and subsidize things over this month until the thing boots up. It could mean any number of things. It's not specified. Nobody has any idea at this point.
Right. So what they didn't come out and say was that we're going to front the cost and pay what would normally have been paid had everyone be a subscriber, which is what people were expecting, because it's the parallel has been drawn many times between Apple Music,
Right.
which launched a couple months ago, and it also had a free trial, and people got up in arms because people listening on the free trial weren't actually giving any money to music creators, and famously Taylor Swift came out and yelled at Apple and supposedly got them to fix it. Right. The cynic in me also thinks that was totally planned and was just for more press. Who knows?
There's also an important distinction, and that is that Taylor Swift with Apple Music refused to list her music under Apple Music because of that condition. YouTube does not have that proviso.
Right.
Now, granted, they do have it with some companies, like ESPN has pulled down all of their YouTube content because they have third-party agreements with probably the NFL, and the NFL is all like, no, you can never display anything at all ever. They're notorious for just being more copyright happy than Disney about everything. So ESPN has pulled all their stuff down, but I think the distinction here is that there's no one kind of saying, I have this super popular thing, and I, am threatening to withhold that, and not allow you to YouTube Red Eyes this unless you fix this. This is more of they've already kind of got the content that they want, and now it's just people are mad about it. So there's not like a bargaining position really to be had. And even those who could kind of threaten to say, I'm going to take all my content down, generally are the people who may benefit most. Like PewDiePie's getting a new show. I think the Fine Brothers are getting a new show with lots of Hollywood dollars to make this big fancy production sort of thing. So there's not a really good reason for them to go, nope, YouTube, I'm gonna remove all my content unless you fix this.
Yeah, very true.
So yeah, we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I've been struggling with this because I thought about like making a video about it and what do you say on Twitter and that type of stuff. But like, there's almost like nothing to say at this point because no one really has any real information, which is what we said a week ago. In some ways, we've learned so much, but also none at all.
Right. Which, it's ever the way with YouTube. Obviously, part of the thing is when you're Google, you change your policies a lot because you're trying to optimize, and you do have a lot of algorithmic-driven decisions. And so if you lock yourself down to saying this is exactly how this platform is going to work, then if you ever want to change that, you need to constantly provide updates and that sort of thing. And certainly some of the stuff that they're negotiating, things like the music videos and things like deals with ESPN or Disney or things like that, are subject to a lot of restrictions that really can't be let's get all YouTubers to agree on this type of negotiation.
We've touched on this a little bit, but their announcement today about how Google Music might be using some of its revenue to pay into the YouTubers does sort of call into question the whole concept of how much of this $10 a month is actually going to go towards YouTube when it fully launches. Because Google Music isn't a cheap service to run.
Right.
And is that 55% split between YouTube and Google Music? And are there your listens also factored into your watches? Mm. Because obviously YouTube is not a cheap platform to run, and I was under the assumption that that 45% of the $10 was going to try to pay hosting bills and that type of stuff.
I find it really hard to think that that's the case. Mm-hmm. I could be wrong. Obviously they're doing a lot, but it feels like at that scale, it really shouldn't require that amount for hosting. I could be completely off base on that. Certainly when it was, we've got 5 channels that we're now granting monetization, and everybody else is ad free, then I can see that a lot more. But it feels like the people that are getting substantial views and are generating significant hosting costs generally are trafficking ads. So, but it's all speculation. Nobody knows. One thing I would like to propose is after this free trial, Alex, I would like one of us to set up a paid account under a different Google account just for a single month, and the other one of us, because you can't watch your own stuff, that's against their terms, but the other one of us to create like a 10-minute video of just talking or something, and that would be the only thing that you watch that month. All right?
Okay, we're going to do this.
So there we go. We've got like this wonderful black box test, and we can go ahead and say from the start, you know, we paid in $10. How much did you end up getting out of that?
Okay, I'm 100% for this. And then perhaps the next month we can do like listen to one song and then listen to an equal length video and see how that, if YouTube is taking a proportion of the money and Google Music is taking a proportion of the money, or
That's
if
true.
Google Music falls under the purview of that 45% that Google itself is keeping.
Well, and we should also be clear that the 45-55 split is after costs,
Right.
which could be anything. And so this could be literally that all of the hosting costs that we were talking about, that 45%, that's already part of costs. So that YouTube has to be spending $5 per YouTube Red subscriber to host things and to pay the music licenses and whatever, and then they're keeping 45% of that remaining $5. So who knows? We can't know. But if I like make a video and on a secret channel and put it up, monetize it, you watch it once, and then I take it down or privatize it so that it can't get any other views, then we should theoretically know what trickles down to the creator. Because, I mean, we'll either see, you know, maybe it's $1, in which case we know, okay, so they've got these costs, and then that's the 45%. Or it could be something like a penny, in which point we know, okay, this is probably they're grouping everybody and, you know, distributing based on watch time in the entire pool of YouTube creators. So that's the best I can come up with as far as trying to figure out how this works.
Yeah. And my assumption would be that if they're grouping everyone, it's not even going to be like a linear approximation. So
Right.
just because you get 500 times as many views doesn't mean you're going to get 500 times as much money. It's going to scale at some factor, but which of course we'll never be able to figure out because that factor is probably going to change every other Tuesday.
Yep. So yes, YouTube Red, we've got lots of updates and still know nothing at all.
Right. I think that's the best way to sort of characterize this whole thing at the moment.
Oh boy. So so we have these show notes that we collaborate on, and usually I just ping you like a little bit before we go. I'm like, hey, I didn't come up with enough things. Throw some stuff in here. And then you come up with these crazy things. So the government has lost control of its blimps, is what you've told me. You wanna dive into that?
Okay. This is the greatest story of today. I figured, you know, after all the depression of these YouTube Red problems, we could talk about a more lighthearted, lighter than air problems of the government's spying blimps. So for some reason, the government thought it would be a good idea to spy on people using lighter than air blimps.
Right.
And there was one of these blimps tied up somewhere near Pennsylvania, and it broke loose. It broke free. It tried to be a free blimp, and it floated across Pennsylvania with a heavy steel tether dragging behind it, and caused thousands of dollars of damage and knocked out power for almost 40,000 people in Pennsylvania before it finally floated down to the ground and was caught.
I'm just imagining, like, you know how they're like storm chasers and stuff. I'm just imagining like these people just chasing after, like in a Humvee or something.
Yes. There was two F-16 fighter jets chasing it, making sure that all of the airplanes and aircraft in the area stayed away from this terrible, terrible blimp. So yes, a bit more of a high-budget storm chaser than a rickety old van, but yeah, essentially.
But like Pennsylvania, because we have to serve it, because Pennsylvania, you will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy than Pennsylvania.
Yeah, we have to keep track of the Amish because the Amish don't use computers and stuff, so there's no other way to track them.
There we
so
go.
We have to use blimps.
The Amish are brilliant. They thwarted the NSA, and yeah. Okay, so two things. one, I'm kind of mad that we were born as late in civilization as we were, because like I had no idea. You used to be able to just like take a blimp from like New York to London.
Yes.
That's
For a short period of time.
right, but that's awesome. I want to do that. Like this feels like something that like Branson should bring back or something.
I mean, it's the same problem. It's the Concorde problem. It was the original Concorde problem.
Yeah.
You had the Hindenburg disaster.
Yes.
And everyone was like, we're done with blimps. Even though you could use like helium or something.
Well, so that's the point number 2. What are they using in these blimps?
I don't know. They're secret government blimps that are used for spying. You can't just go out and find the tech specs.
But, well, because here's the thing. To my mind, there are 2 possible answers. One, it's hydrogen, so it's a bomb above Pennsylvania, which is stupid. 2, it's helium, and we don't have enough helium. We need it for MRIs. What are they doing? Putting MRI machine support over Pennsylvania.
Well, see, the government, I don't think, has realized that helium is a precious resource yet. They're still selling its stockpile at, like, a ridiculous price.
Well, I don't care about selling the stuff. Like, I don't... If we consider the Earth to be a closed system, I don't particularly care if I have it, or you have it, or Pakistan has it. I care that we don't, like, go, let's have, like, free balloon day everywhere to make it a national holiday and just completely waste it. I care that it leaves the atmosphere. That's the thing.
That is the big problem. The Earth is not a closed system when it comes to helium.
Right.
It all floats to the top of the atmosphere and gets swept away by the solar wind. But that's the primary wasting use is these balloons. It wouldn't surprise me at all if it was just helium that they threw in this thing. I should look at the article. I think the article did mention helium. There's a very simple way. Yes. Yes, it is helium. It specifically mentions helium.
So yeah, why? Why? This is so. So the thing is that MRI machines need to be supercooled. Helium is the way that you supercool things. We don't have a way to do that otherwise. And MRIs are potentially like the biggest, most awesome thing in medicine that is actually realized. That's not still in the experimental stages of things.
Yes.
Like MRIs are the coolest thing that we have in medicine that's practiced.
Yes.
And we're spending helium doing really stupid things like this. To investigate Pennsylvania. It's not even like there's some big terrorist cell in Syria. We couldn't figure out how to, like, anything that, you know, jets generated too much noise, and they've got these crazy sonic detectors or whatever, so we're just going to float a little blimp over the top of that. Like, no, this is so we can track Pennsylvanians.
I mean, and here's another kicker to this. According to Edward Snowden, the infamous government leaker,
right,
there was $2.7 billion spent on this program.
We should also clarify, not leaking helium.
Well, I mean, no, he's leaking information, such as the $2.7 billion spent on building surveillance blimps that waste all our helium.
Well, okay, so I guess I'm probably less concerned about, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
So this is going to get a little economy-y.
The Accidental Economy Podcast.
Right, accidentally irritating conservatives and liberals alike. Now, I'm not super in favor of pumping a lot of money into social services and support kind of indiscriminately, but the thing that I really don't understand from the perspective of, and a lot of this is to do with stuff like the Federal Reserve and the quantitative easing, and we need to keep interest rates very, very low and that sort of thing. And to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense because it ends up incentivizing companies that don't need to create value because they can borrow money for just about nothing.
Okay.
But this is a way that we're trying to prop up our economy. And it appears, from what I've seen, that the goal is to fix unemployment, right? I mean, that's the ultimate goal of trying to prop up the economy. The thing is that I don't understand if it is imperative that we throw tax money at trying to prop up the economy, why not do it through make work jobs? Like, infrastructure projects like New Deal, FDR type stuff. Like, let's throw a ton of money at NASA. Let's throw a ton of money at building random bridges. Let's build a monorail from Los Angeles to New York. Let's do, random crazy stupid stuff that isn't necessarily profitable, but it puts people to work. And it feels like that would more directly fix the unemployment problem than saying, we're going to try and make the stock market a little bit better, because people are very scared about investing.
Well, it also makes projects like those are also very public. Like spending $2.7 billion on a blimp no one cares about, no one likes. But spending $2.7 billion on a monorail, everyone's like, yeah, monorails, or spend it on NASA.
And at the end, you have a monorail and not a runaway blimp. No, but so to circle back, the reason that I'm not as concerned with the military thing is that a lot of the military contract work that we have is that. It's make work jobs.
Yes.
We are making tanks that we will never, ever use, and then we are hiring people to store those tanks. So this is we're throwing tax money to give people jobs to do stuff that doesn't matter. So it's a make work job, and I'm like, okay, well then, I guess the resources problem, the helium thing, that's the part that irks me. It's like, how about we just make, I don't know, what's the most common element?
Hydrogen. Hydrogen is the most common element.
I'm not in favor of hydrogen blimps either.
What is it? I think it goes hydrogen, helium, oxygen's. I need to look at the periodic table.
Yeah, right. No, but but I don't know. Yeah. So I'm not super bent out about the military-industrial complex, because it seems like a smarter way to say we've got to throw tax dollars at trying to fix the economy than the other ways that we're doing it. So at least it's infrastructure. If we ever decide we want to have an everybody gets a tank day, we've got the stockpile to do it now. So, it's a thing.
Yes. I mean, and they're kind of doing that. You can look like in my home state of New Hampshire, I believe Keene, New Hampshire bought a tank a few years back for its police force. So yeah, right. I mean, we're moving towards that.
Oh man, I don't understand war.
No, I don't either.
I don't understand most violence, to be honest. It doesn't. And it's not from a peacenik perspective. It's just it doesn't. I don't get it. I don't understand.
It's very inefficient.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Maybe that's the programmer thing. It's like, this is a really slow way to do this. Let's write an Excel macro instead. Well,
I mean, you just think they did that in Star Trek. They're like, we'll just let the computers have the war, and then we'll tabulate the casualties, and we'll just throw them in the
and actually kill them. Yes. Oh man.
I mean, that goes back decades.
Yeah. Well, no, but even then, I don't understand how. I guess maybe it's part of how I like to argue, but if I really don't like someone, I don't want them to be dead. I want them to realize they're wrong. To me, that's what victory is. I don't want them to be. If we're having an argument, I don't want you to suddenly not be able to argue anymore. I want you to start arguing my side, and then I have won.
So you want brain control. Mind control is an acceptable replacement for death. Okay.
That's I mean, I know you're joking, but it's hard to think, if you could say, if it was a choice between killing people and completely brainwashing, mind controlling people, then it's a hard decision to make.
From an efficiency standpoint, you'd be giving up free labor, but
oh man. Yeah.
I think there's too many moral problems there for me to be on board with this issue.
No, I don't want to mind control people. I don't want to brainwash people. I'm arguing and dislike people because I think that they are wrong, and I want them to see the error of their ways. That is victory for me. And I don't think that shooting people does that. I don't come in and I don't come in with nukes and they go, oh wow, you know what? I'm thinking about it. You were right all along. That's brilliant. I'm swayed.
We don't actually own Crimea. You're right. Yeah, that doesn't seem to happen.
Speaking of Russia and the U.S., the ISS had an EVA today.
It did.
I watched it.
Did you fall asleep? Have you found the cure for your insomnia? Great.
So did you watch it then?
No, but I've seen many before.
No, this was Scott Kelly and Shel Lindgren. And no, I realized that I've not ever seen an EVA. I've never watched an EVA live stream. And yes, it does get slow. Funnily enough, like them actually pressurizing and packing themselves in like sardine cans was more entertaining than them being outside the station.
Yeah.
But the thing that I don't understand, and maybe you can explain this to me, because I don't know about the technology, but so, I think most of us at some point have seen a stream from the ISS for some minor period of time for something. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's just you came across, someone blowing a bubble and showing how that works in 0G or, whatever. And you see like, oh, they've got these great, high definition things and they're able to stream at very high resolution and that sort of thing. When they go on EVA, the cameras that they have on the EVA suits are terrible. And they're terrible in not just it's an old camera and it's got scanline-y, problem-y stuff, and it's glitchy. Because that's fine. Like, okay, it's an old suit. But it's also terrible in the sense that they lose the signal all the time. And okay. I don't understand why it's the case that you can get a perfect, no-interrupt live stream from inside the station, and yet all of a sudden, like, the minute you're a few inches away, it's like, oh, there's no signal out here. It's... Nope. Couldn't you relay...
I mean,
to the antenna inside the station, maybe.
I doubt it's going direct back to Earth. But it may be going. I mean, the ISS, and I bet those suits are from the 80s because that's when the whole shuttle program really spun up. I'm not sure the video relay equipment would have been on their highest priority.
Oh no! And I'm sure the suits are old. But the cameras can't be from the 80s, right? Could they? We're not going to have wireless live streaming cameras on the shoulders of EVA suits in the 80s.
But no. But you might have... Well, you might have an analog broadcasting camera.
Right.
What I'm saying is that's probably what it is. It's an analog broadcasting camera that broadcasts to the station, and then they have like an analog to digital box that sucks in that analog signal and streams it back to NASA.
Okay, but then still, why is it more interrupty than the interior stuff? You still got the signal. It's literally like so we've established that you can transmit from NASA to the station flawlessly. Yes. Going from the station to 2 feet away from the station this is all sorts of disaster.
I don't have a good answer.
Okay.
The last time I watched an EVA, I think was the last mission to the Hubble. It was in like middle or high school or something like that. They did a final repair. Like we're not going to be able to come up here for a long time, so this is it.
Right.
They cleaned it, and I think they installed a new like optics or computer package and stuff like that. And that was like the mid 2000s or early 2000s or something. And they did not have near the 1080p 4K quality that we see on YouTube all the time now. They had very much the same type of stuff that you're probably referring to, like analog cameras,
right?
Probably beaming down analog signals.
And there were some hull cams that were very clearly like, yeah, this is 70s, 80s type stuff or whatever. But yeah, it didn't make sense because I'm sitting there, I'm like, they didn't have these over-the-shoulder cameras forever. Like, these had to be somewhat newish additions. And because they had to be added, that means they could be replaced. with like, I don't know, a GoPro.
With the Wi-Fi pack in it.
Like, seriously.
Does the station have Wi-Fi?
I believe they do, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, that would do it.
Yeah, there we go. We solved it. Well, and actually, I was thinking about this because if so a lot of NASA has to kind of necessarily be about pimping NASA.
Yes.
Right? I mean, that's part of space exploration is getting people hyped about space exploration. What a better way than to just say, let's just throw a 360 GoPro rig around, and then just people can Google Cardboard or Oculus Rift or whatever as people are out on EVA.
Just, like, float it up above the space station, like, tether it down, like, have an Ethernet cable and have, like, the
No.
360 camera.
Even on the shoulder, it's not blocking much. You're blocking a small amount.
Right. To see what they're doing, perhaps, but
no. To have an additional one that's just always out there, that would also be really cool. And the thing is, like, I know that NASA it can't afford a lot of stuff, but this, like, a GoPro 360 rig is like $4,000, maybe. Yeah. Like,
and you don't have to worry about how heavy it is.
Stitch it. Exactly. It's ridiculously light. And I'm just like, this feels like, as far as a PR investment, this feels like, as far as securing NASA revenue per pound.
Yeah.
This feels like a no-brainer. And there's got to be some reason why they're like, nope, just can't happen. But
yeah. I mean, NASA budgeting is weird, and I think it has to do with the fact that the EVAs are really boring to watch.
But they wouldn't be if you felt like you were out there. There's a 360 video of EVE Online that Scott Manley put out, which now I'm going to track down to throw in the show notes. So I got a Google Cardboard because I was at Google I/O and they handed them out. We were like, "This is what you're giving? Okay, piece of cardboard." And to be honest, a lot of the 360 stuff is really boring. It's like, I'm on a really badly rendered roller coaster, but I don't feel the G's, so it's not like being on a roller coaster. Hooray! But Scott Manley did this EVE Online 360 video, and all of a sudden I figured, okay, well, I'll pull out the Google Cardboard because I didn't throw it away, and I was watching, I was like, this is an experience that I would not otherwise have. Right. You can take panorama photos with your phone and then throw that into VR, and you're like, oh, look, it's like I'm standing in a different place from where I usually stand. This is what it would look like if I were standing in, underneath the Eiffel Tower, or, whatever the case may be. Being in the middle of space is way different, and just mind-blowingly so. And why, NASA? Come on. I don't know. Maybe I'm completely off here. Maybe there's a really good reason, but it just feels like this would be a great way to get people super psyched about it. And like, what if you had tiny little RCS thrusters, and then you could have like a Twitch plays ISS?
Till it runs into the super fragile solar panel, and they have to evacuate the station.
Yes, but think about how many people would watch that Twitch stream, like that, and set up a tip jar. You've got to make some of that money back,
and then you have YouTube Red, and they'll make all the money back. Oh, it brings it all together. Yeah. I actually have no idea how I feel about that VR stuff. I have a friend who owns 2 different Oculus Rifts, not Risk, and I've never used it. I've never worn any of those VR headsets, so I don't know. I have no firsthand opinion of the VR future.
I feel like it's the sort of thing where the more realistic something is, the less entertaining it is. But it reminds me of kind of my initial reaction when Nintendo announced the Wii. and that like there's this medium, and you're making the medium harder.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, games, wonderful. I've been working and being productive, and I want to sit on a couch and be lazy. But no, because it's a Wii. With VR, like the 360 videos, they're cool, like, conceptually, but there's also just the issue of, oh, now I actually have to physically turn around because something important plotline-wise is happening over there.
Right.
Which is less awesome. I don't know.
I mean, it makes the concept of if you shoot a VR like movie or something, like where you put the camera, where you put the audience becomes a lot more important.
Right.
Because you don't want to have them like spinning in circles; they'll just get dizzy.
Yeah. But then also, if you try and keep everything, I mean, because Disney has had for a long time the 180 video theaters.
Mm-hmm.
You stand. And I was never a fan. Because I'm like I'm watching, and now I'm not now it's. I mean, to me, it's I don't get it. It's like watching a sitcom, except you have to be the person who switches between the cameras.
Yeah,
it's like a half done thing.
It's like we did all the shooting, you do the editing.
Right, exactly. It's not to say that it can't be done well, and I think for experiences where it is, because there was some demo at some point where they had, Oculus Rift Game of Thrones environment or things like that, and I'm like, it would be cool to be able to walk around in a fantasy world, do things like that, where this isn't an experience I could otherwise have, and it is very much interactive and responsive. If it's a matter of trying to ingest somewhat passive media like video, well, then it's not my job to tell you how this thing should be framed. You're supposed to be feeding me stuff.
Right.
Gaming is more of a participatory medium, but even then I feel like there are limits. And certainly until we figure out how to move reasonably and cheaply without moving,
yes,
then who knows?
Yeah. You have to really constrain the scope of the game in some ways.
Yeah.
Just because if you're moving without actually moving, it cheapens the effect.
Right.
In some ways. And all the they've got like 360 treadmills.
Right.
But those are really expensive and are a not one time, but a single purpose machine. You'd have to play a lot of games.
Right.
Take up like a corner of your apartment or your house or something.
Well, and it's a chicken and the egg problem as well. I mean, it's like the first Xbox. If you were not a fan of Halo, there was no reason to buy an Xbox. And because nobody bought an Xbox, nobody developed games for the Xbox. And so it becomes the same thing with VR, is that until you have a cost-effective way of doing it, nobody's going to massively throw content toward the platform. Until there's a lot of content toward the platform, there's not a huge incentive to do it. I think probably the most promising way to go about this is to actually look at like the neural caps and try that route. I don't know to what extent that'll play out.
Are you saying try to like induce a phantom limb sort of sensation?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, yeah.
Okay.
Because there are demos of that. I mean, it's an EEG, an electroencephalogram, but a much more limited version. And the idea is that the computer eventually learns. It tracks your patterns, and you think about a certain thing, and it goes, okay, this is what your brain looks like when you're thinking about that thing. And then when you think about it again, it goes, okay, I'm going to assume that means you want to go forward. So if you were to try and look at, phantom limb, things like that, and you could envision, I'm sure that there's got to be some sort of brain pattern that happens when you're playing like an over-the-shoulder third-person game, and you see your avatar moving forward, right?
Right.
Or strafing or whatever. Like, I'm thinking like a World of Warcraft type of thing. Like, there's got to be some sort of brain pattern that lights up. And to the extent that you could eventually train a machine to recognize your own brain when it sees that, and then just imagine your character walking forward and your character does walk forward. That would be wonderful. That would be a way to make VR much more interesting. And also means that you could deal with rotation without actually having to physically rotate.
Right. I mean, the biggest issue I think is that is a two-way street. You want to be able to think about turning, but you also want to feel like you are turning.
Right.
Like physically, like if you go out and try to grab an apple, certainly you can think about moving your arm to try and grab that apple, but if you don't feel anything, if your hand just closes in on itself and makes a fist and doesn't grab the apple,
Yep.
that's also it breaks the experience.
Right.
And so if you could find a way to sort of send electrical signals back into the brain, which in some ways is kind of scary.
Well, I mean, I believe that they've done that in very limited circumstances, like quadriplegics, where they're dealing with robotic arms and stuff. I believe that they actually do have kind of dual. They've both got that you're able to control it and you are able to receive some sort of feedback from it. But certainly, like the haptic and response technology stuff has got to come a long way too.
Yeah,
I have to admit though, I'm less concerned about that because I feel like we've made a lot more progress in terms of getting information from the ether to a person, and we've done a really terrible job at the reverse. The typewriter is still the fastest way to communicate a thing.
Pretty much, yeah.
Really stupid. Like, we've had typewriters for a very long time. Why haven't we have not advanced in this technology at all?
Yeah.
I mean, you can argue that speech is more efficient, but certainly with technology not super good at speech, as certainly not at speed, typing is still the fastest way to communicate to another not person.
And I mean, there are people who can type using shorthand and such like that, can type at a reasonable speaking rate.
Right.
The fastest speakers are still going to outpace the fastest typists, but
right,
it's not unreasonable.
But even then, I think I'm not sure that this is the case, but I think it is possible, like the fastest reader, the fastest speed reader who was still tested and retained comprehension was faster than the fastest speaker, I think.
Oh, interesting.
I'd have to check on that. But if that's the case, it means that there is additional overhead beyond speech that we could also bypass. If it were, it'd be really cool if we could go, we've come up with this thing that allows you to really do a stream of consciousness without the lag that it takes to translate it into words.
Yeah, and whatever internal brain mechanics happen behind the scenes.
Right. Well, I mean, because you think about a keyboard, it should be very slow. So you have an idea, which is this amorphous whatever it is. You have to convert that into a set of symbols. You have to convert the symbols into words.
Right.
You then have to convert the words into their symbolic representation.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to translate those symbolic representations into physical movements, which then have to be coordinated. So that's so many layers that a keyboard should be a really, like, this is like asking me to translate this thing into 5 different languages. It should be really, really slow. So it feels like the fact that the typewriter is still the fastest way for us to put stuff out, there's got to be like a whole swath of input methods that could be much, much faster.
But, I mean, when you consider that it's probably true, because we spend basically, I mean, kids born nowadays will spend the first 10 years of their life essentially learning nothing but how to take the thoughts, turn them into words, turn them into symbols, and then learn how to type them into a computer at a reasonable speed.
Right.
Like, it takes 10 years to learn how to do that. Yeah. If you could have a computer be able to analyze, like, the brain waves and the patterns and extract that information, like, at year 2,
yeah,
it could probably do it way faster.
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like we're much, much better. We've made a lot of advances as far as getting information into our brains. We've made almost no progress in terms of getting it out. At least in terms of what's been popularly adopted. Because you think about what was the best way to get a lot of information in when we had typewriters. I mean, listening to people and reading.
Yeah.
Reading's still pretty high up there, but you've also got screens and digital. We had text only screens, and now we've got visual screens, and now we've got these 3D environments and things like that. So I'm less concerned about, oh no, we don't know how to communicate this virtual world to a person. I feel like we're going to make advances in haptic and visual and auditory responses and stuff like that. We've got you can record 360 audioscapes, which are really cool to listen to. Like, we've figured a lot of this stuff out. Smell, I think, is probably going to be a huge stumbling block. But,
yeah.
Well, we're going to evolve out of having smell as a sense anyway. So,
are we? I mean, that brings us to all questions. Are humans still evolving, really?
Yes.
Because I've seen arguments that say, like, our technology, like, we've replaced our evolution with technology.
Yeah, but the thing is, that's evolution.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, but
regardless of whether or not it's driven, I mean, the thing is that, evolution is broadly enough defined that whoever survives kind of dictates what fitness means.
True.
That if we decided today that we want to take the people who are least likely to reproduce and who would otherwise live very short lives and say that these are the ones that we want to live forever, then that happens to be a marker for fitness in this particular environment. So we have this idea of what is fit, and what would, be selected in some arbitrary environment. But the problem is that the environment is always flexible and amorphous, and so fitness is just as amorphous. And so to the extent that technology is the thing, then that's the new genetics.
Well, but I suppose in the sense that maybe you're not good at technology, but what I mean when I say technology's replaced evolution is that we can now make so much food that everyone can, like, if we decided, everyone could eat. Like, yes. the only reason that we have hungry people is because we,
because of the organic food movement.
Yes, that's exactly because we as a society haven't decided that it's an important enough problem to fix. I mean, technologically speaking, we could do it.
Yes.
Right? And so because of our technology advances, like, we don't have faster people be more likely to survive if they're born in the right country, essentially.
Right, but no, you're right. The only argument that I'm making is that being a faster, more virile, more longer living human is something that we subjectively think is a good thing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that person is more fit.
Right.
And that at this point, and we very well could change technology to the point where being a fat, lazy slob who can type at a fast word per minute is the best marker for evolutionary success.
Yeah. I guess I just
even
don't
though
see...
yes, I would subjectively agree that's a really stupid thing to select for.
Yes. I just don't see why we as a society or as a species would ever select smell to go away. There's like, why would someone without smell be genetically superior to someone and more likely to pass on their genes? Why would smell evolve away over the next?
Oh no, well, because I don't think there's a case for that lack of smell is an advantage. Mm-hmm. It's just the resource wasting thing. We don't have 5 arms because we can't do much more because it takes a lot of energy to support having 5 arms, yes. And there are marginal returns to having more than 2. At least theoretically, in the environment in which we evolved, there were presumably limited returns, or we never happened to, there was never anybody who started to grow a 3rd arm.
Yeah.
But I do believe that our sense of smell is declining. Granted, that could change, but I believe it was just because it does not provide enough of an advantage at this point. That it ends up just being a wasteful thing. I mean, we've got to devote neurons to that. Neurons that could be learning how to program stuff.
The most important skill and the best genetic marker.
Exactly. Well, I mean, we are a Code Monkey podcast. We got to talk about code sometimes.
Yes. It's true. It is the best genetic marker.
I do find it interesting because the other thing on the point of evolution, I mean, this may be more to your point, is that genes are not the only replicators. we do have this idea of just kind of memes and how they transmit. And I think it's entirely possible that we could get to a point where the extent to which you reproduce or are a foot organism is the extent to which you have an influence on people, rather than the extent to which you have biological offspring. And then that becomes the new form of, to some extent, reproduction.
Yeah. I think I think that's a long time coming. Like, why did people build the pyramids? You know, they're still around, kind of. I mean, memes are just the new pyramids.
You need to explain that. I don't know where you're going with this.
You don't. Okay, so people built the pyramids because they wanted to be remembered. Or the people who built them didn't do it because they wanted to be remembered. The people who commanded the people that built the pyramids built the pyramids because they wanted to be remembered, and they had influence over those people. So they lasted a long time because they could influence a lot of people. Right? And from what I got from what you were saying, the internet allows us, perhaps, I don't know. Maybe I missed what you were saying.
Oh no, just the idea that, and not necessarily that it will become more desirable for a person to be remembered than to have children. Just that we will see that start to play more of an influence, in that, to the extent that I'm able to, if I make a ton of YouTube videos and a ton of people watch them, there will be more people who have attitudes like me in the next generation. And that ends up playing more of a role in people's personalities and their outward manifestations than their genes. And that's partially just because we're not reproducing like we used to. We don't have 8-bedroom homes anymore.
True. Okay. Yeah, okay. I was thinking somewhere more along the lines of your legacy is what lives on, but it's more not your legacy, it's your personality traits.
Yeah. I mean, it's just that it's the transmission. The transmission is not through the medium of chromosomes as much as it is in the information that we pass on between different generations. I mean, and to some extent, that's always been the case, since language. But I think it's to the point where it may play more and more of a role and start really dwarfing what chromosomes actually mean. Especially if we start saying, chromosome, let's just fix the chromosomes. And start manipulating them and that stuff.
Do you think that'll happen in our lifetimes?
I mean, it is sort of happening now.
We're still playing the mapping game, right? We're still trying to figure out what everything does.
Oh yeah, no, certainly. But we're already, there are couples that will filter out. Certainly, they'll go for in vitro and then they'll filter out, zygotes that have certain, not zygotes, whatever the basic pre-in vitro fertilization unit is. They'll filter out things that are seen to have particular genetic issues.
Right, but that's not actively going in and changing it, right?
It's not going in and changing it. It's just the selection thing. I don't think we're changing stuff yet. I mean, we did build I think was it Ventnor Labs. They did construct a protein. And they actually, it's got like a copyright written in the DNA.
No. Oh no.
Or something like that. I'll find it and put it in the show notes. I mean, so we can construct these things, but I don't think we're at the point of actually manipulating them in practice.
Okay. See, I didn't think we were quite there yet, and I'm not even sure if we'd get there. For like a myriad of reasons, not just that we might not technologically be able to get there, but I'm not sure society is going to accept it when we do.
Well, I mean, though, if you think about it, if we're able to manipulate the genes such that they're super, super awesome, eventually the people who won't have much of a say.
Well, I think that's a chicken and the egg problem as well. Like, yes, if you do have people who are genetically modified and are super, super awesome, then yeah, they'll overpower the vote of the people who are against it. But getting them in the first place requires to overpowering the vote, right?
Well, no, I mean, because then it just becomes another evolutionary thing. The question is whether or not the people who are genetically modified are actually more fit.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
if they are, then yeah, they eventually take over. Unless the strain is so small that it dies out. So if it provides so much of an advantage and there's enough of a minimum population, then hooray. I mean, presumably there's got to be, a whole bunch of points back in history where we evolved something super, super awesome, but like it was one person and they didn't mate for whatever happenstance reason.
Or they got eaten by a lion.
Right, exactly. Like they were born and they had superpowers, but nope, they didn't get to the church on time, and that's a dead end now. Despite the fact that in almost all of the rest of the environment, it would have been genius.
Yeah. Yeah. Just bad luck.
Yeah.
That's what mostly evolution is, luck. That's why it takes so long.
I don't know. I'm scared to agree with you just because luck is a term that I feel like just can be used to discredit it.
Okay.
I don't believe in luck.
Don't believe in luck.
Because I believe in determinism.
Okay.
Luck to me sounds like chance. And really with evolution there's really no such thing as chance. There's random mutation, but random mutation is still deterministic. It's a matter of this physics happened. There was a solar ray. There was some solar radiation. It tore off that, particular allele or whatever the word is.
Okay. I mean, I think that's because I'm not a determinist. I stand quite optimistically in my quantum bubble and refuse to listen to anything else for my own sanity.
Oh man.
Which is, of course, this huge debate.
It's really not.
Is it? Isn't it? I don't know. I feel like it's this huge thing that people love to
explain what you're talking about for viewers who may not be super philosophically inclined.
Okay, so I would say there's two competing camps in this issue. There is the belief that everything in the universe follows a well-defined set of rules, and so that from the moment of the Big Bang, you can trace out exactly what would happen in the universe. Like, this particle is going to interact with this particle, assuming you could know everything, assuming everything was known, and that you had infinite knowledge about every particle in the entire universe. You could trace how they were going to interact for the next second, and then, or the next millisecond, and then you can just keep extrapolating out and see how all those particles are going to interact from the Big Bang until the end of time.
Right.
That's determinism. That's everything has been determined from the beginning.
Right.
However, in the rules of the universe as we understand them at the moment don't always seem to be perfectly determined. So in an atom, you have your protons, your neutrons, and your electrons. And where the electron is around that atom is not a certainty. There's a probability.
We should be clear that the other side of determinism is free will. What you're talking about is kind of a particular argument for free will, not kind of this is the entire opposite argument.
No. I suppose that's true.
Out of deference to all of the free will folks, I just don't want to say like quantum is the only argument for free will.
I suppose it's the only one that seems compelling to me. So that's the one I was explaining. But yeah, so you don't know where that electron is going to be. You only have like a 50% chance it's going to be here, or a 75% chance it's going to be here, or whatever the probabilities may work out to be. And so even if you knew everything from the beginning of the universe, because your electrons and other fundamental particles don't act the same way all the time, you still can't figure out where everything's going to be. It's non-deterministic because it's random.
Right. But Also, there's also no such thing at the macro scale.
Right.
Laws of quantum mechanics don't operate on the macro scale. The other thing, and I just want to, because you talk about this as being like the optimistic viewpoint. To me, yes. I think determinism is optimistic because I think that one day we may know these things. I am optimistic about the abilities of science. You think, nope, never solvable, can never know anything. That to me seems remarkably pessimistic.
It's not that it's never solvable. It's that we've solved it, but it's not that the solution is a set of probabilities, right?
No,
we understand how it works. It's just it works in a random way.
I don't think we really understand how it works. I think that our model of the universe is necessarily incomplete, and we may never have a complete understanding of it. But I believe that there is that it is determined.
Yeah,
and that what appears to be random probability actually would be something that would be predictable if we had a full, complete understanding of the universe, which we will never have, definitionally.
Right.
But
it's impossible. Yeah.
You know, we don't know. We don't.
At this point, I would say that. Yeah.
But also the probability, the effect of quantum mechanics is so minute that
atoms are very small.
Right, but the extent to which it plays a role in something that is on comparatively such a macro scale, such as chromosomes, is enough to be considered just about negligible. Then maybe you can consider it a cause for like a single mutation, but in the scope of things, the reason we get cancer is because of mutation. Our cells mutate all of the time. To say, oh, well, it was, that evolution happened because every so often quantum mechanics flips a bit in our code, and then it makes something cool, and we select for that. I think it's hard to argue that it plays more than a non-trivial role.
Right.
Granted, given enough time, and given enough space and enough matter and all of that, then sure, you can have anything you want.
Yeah. I mean, I used to read back in high school a lot of theoretical physics books and this type of stuff, particularly by an author, Michio Kaku, who does some interesting TV specials, and Brian Greene, who's often on PBS's Nova. And like even just thinking about the absurdities in quantum mechanics. So quantum mechanical models predict that if you were to push against a wall for the entire length of the universe, eventually you would phase through the wall. Like all the probability that all your atomic locations would be on the other side of the wall becomes like much longer than the age of the universe.
Okay, I was going to say, I don't think the age of the universe is a long enough time. I'm pretty sure the heat death of the universe happens first.
Yes, but at some point,
margin.
At some point, given enough time, you would teleport to the other side of the wall. So it's a fun experiment to try at home. Just rest against the wall and see
a billion times past the heat death of the universe. Actually, but you know what? I'll tell you a little shortcut. You wait for the heat death of the universe. There is no wall, and you can just walk. I mean, save you billions and billions and trillions of years.
I should know it's before that becomes probable. So there is a chance that it may happen in the first week.
Right.
It's just extremely negligible, right?
Right.
So
give it a try. Give it a try right now. If any of our listeners happen to teleport through a wall,
let us know in the comments.
Oh man. Oh.
So it's not that quantum mechanics can't have an effect on the macro level, it's that it's unlikely that it does.
Right. Not to say that it didn't happen or couldn't happen or it's there is that whole butterfly effect thing. It could be that an electron being in one place rather than another resulted in Hitler, or but the extent there are so many other things at play that you'd have to say maybe that one electron does not have as much of an influence as we might think.
Wow.
Oh, man. Yeah, so this is a code podcast.
It is. It is a code podcast.
We have... I was looking through... I think we've actually only got one story about code. Did you get a chance to watch the video that I threw in? It's also space, I guess.
Yeah. It is.
So yeah, nerds. So Andy Weir. So I came across this video. Andy Weir, who's the author who wrote The Martian, which has become this massively successful movie. Mm-hmm. Where yet again Hollywood tries to abandon Matt Damon, and he doesn't go for it. But Andy Weir gave this presentation at Google where he talked about one of the concepts that is not a spoilery thing, it's just kind of part of the premise thing, is that there is this ship that travels using constant thrust. That is, right. It is an engine that is always firing at very tiny, minuscule amounts of thrust, which is perhaps more efficient than just burning a rocket for a short period of time and trying to generate a lot of fuel that way. Right. But the problem is that the math to try and figure out how do you get a constant thrust craft to Mars and back is ridiculously complicated.
Yes.
And he mentions in the video that he couldn't figure out the math. He asked his friends, they couldn't figure out the math. He finally asked NASA, and they said, "Oh, we don't know. We just run simulations. We just book supercomputer time and figure it out." So effectively, that's what he did. He wrote a program that would go through and just simulate constant thrust. So, which I think you can do kind of fairly easily.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on how many things you're trying to take into account for. You try to take into account every particle in the universe, or in the flight path, it becomes significantly more difficult.
I have to imagine it was single body physics. I have to imagine.
I don't know. I mean, I could see the case for 3-body physics. So the Earth, the craft, and and Mars, maybe even the Moon, but. Beyond that, beyond like 4-body physics,
it gets complicated.
I mean, even 4-body physics is complicated, but they do teach it. It is not a weird theoretical
at your
landscape.
School, maybe.
Well, a lot of different schools.
I am woefully under physicsed, which makes me sad sometimes. I was looking. There's not a lot of MIT open courseware lecture stuff in physics. Makes me sad.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, if you had any questions, I could call my dad. He's a physics professor. So if you had any specific questions, I could probably find the answers. But just trying to learn all of physics online is not
impossible.
Not impossible?
Yeah,
but it's
not impossible.
Easy.
See, when I did, I turned around the direction that you were going. I was like, yeah. No, I mean, it's interesting to me because I think there are some fields that you would think lend themselves more to kind of self-directed education, and some that don't. Mm-hmm. I would have thought that physics would be very good at self-directed education.
I guess is math. I haven't really looked online a ton.
Sorry, is
there a lot of resources online for math?
I remember skipping almost all of my calculus course in college and then just watching the MIT lectures.
Yeah.
I don't know if I passed that class though. No. I think I got a B on the final, but I hadn't submitted any homework assignments, so I failed the class.
Yeah, I hate that. That's the worst.
I got into that sort of depressive loop of like, I don't want to go to class today because I didn't do the assignment, and then I wouldn't get the assignment for the next class because I didn't go to class, and then it just kind of spirals.
Homework is bar none the worst part of any school.
Well, no, I got to disagree when it comes to programming classes.
Okay. But those are projects. Projects are fun. Homework like reading the textbook and writing the essays, those are boring. Projects are fun. They're always distinct on the syllabus. They're always projects for like coding stuff and like homework for reading the book stuff.
Well, no, see, I guess I had kind of a different experience because there were projects that were, this is a thing that we expect to take a few weeks. Mm-hmm. And then there was homework where it's like, here is an example of a thing that you want to do. Write, like a page worth of code. And that was fun too. I was like, yeah, I'm cool with this. This is homework. This is fun.
I might have had one class like that, but beyond that, I didn't. Actually, I can...
Carno map homework? That's the best homework. Yeah, well... That is the best homework. That's better than projects.
Carnov, I only learned about Carnov maps because I decided to take an elective in electrical and computer engineering. But yeah, it was super useful, and I like passed an exam in my regular CS courses because of it. And
do you want to explain Carno maps to our audience? I'm constantly going, oh, I just said a word that's... Yeah.
Okay, Carnov maps are... Their build is finding a simplest expression to a logic problem, right? I'm trying to recall exactly what they're used for.
This is part of why I asked you, because I'm like, it's been a while.
So... They're used a lot in circuitry because
yes, it is for finding the simplest expression of Boolean, if I remember correctly.
Why it was useful on that particular exam, I don't remember.
Well, so the idea is that you have a set of inputs that are on or off, right?
Right.
And so you've got, A, B, C, and D, and what you want to try and figure out is how can I combine them to get the result I want? If you've got some various switches and you want to combine them in a particular way and you know what the output should be for every combination of those, you can figure out how many ways you have to combine the various signals and in a way that minimizes the number of logic gates.
Yeah.
So you can say A and B, if you basically just, wire them together and then, wire against something else. And what this allows you to do is minimize the amount of hardware that you have to use in between those input signals to your output signal.
Yeah, and the weird bit about it is that it's accomplished by essentially mapping the inputs and their values onto a toroid and seeing which ones are...
I wouldn't. You can't just throw that word out.
I know.
You basically do Sudoku.
Yes,
it's basically Sudoku, but for circuits.
Yes. We will obviously have many links in the show notes.
What? I don't have these resources. Who are you talking?
And the Wikipedia page.
I'm just going to link the XKCD.